Israel says it's targeting the oil infrastructure near Tehran in the war against the Iranian regime, sparking fires right across the Iranian capital. Dramatic pictures, and there are reports this morning black clouds are raining oil near Tehran as leaders there say they've chosen a new supreme leader. I'll ask the former U.S. Middle East envoy Dennis Ross about the shifting dynamics in the region. Plus, thousands of Canadians are stranded in the Persian Gulf. I'll speak with one Canadian about his difficult journey home. It is Sunday, and we are live. Thanks so much for joining us on this Sunday. Lots of Canadian news to get to as well, but we will start with the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran. Now in its 9th day, it is escalating. The latest Israeli strikes on 4 oil storage depots and a refining facility in Tehran have sparked large fires across Iran's capital, killing at least 4 people. The strikes have left the streets of Tehran filled with thick clouds of smoke and walls of flames. Meanwhile, Iranian officials say they've chosen a new supreme leader, a development Israel issued a stark warning against, saying its forces would not hesitate to target the new chief and officials who confirm him. The original U.S.-Israeli strikes began during talks with Iran to try and reach an agreement around the country's nuclear program. Now, Donald Trump is demanding Iran's unconditional, complete surrender, a demand that Iran's president has denied. Dennis Ross was the U.S. point man on the peace process in the Middle East during both the George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton administrations. I spoke with him a little bit earlier this morning. Ambassador Dennis Ross joins me this morning. Thanks so much for making the time.
Good to be with you.
I have lots of questions for you, as you can imagine. I'm going to start with news out of Iran saying that they have chosen a new supreme leader, though at this moment we don't know the name. Israel saying it would target the person whose name because they have gone after sort of all the layers of leadership. What do you make of these developments?
Well, I think the Iranians are trying to demonstrate that it is a system that is embedded, that the life of the Islamic Republic will continue, that is, it can take the blows that is being inflicted on it. And I think Israel is trying to say anyone who is part of this system, who will perpetuate the system and will represent a threat to us and others, is going to be in our crosshairs, and we will go after them.
What is your understanding right now of what you think the United States and Israel are trying to do? Because it has been, I would say, sort of a shifting message from the U.S. president at any rate.
The question, I think, goes to the heart of the matter. As someone who is a book out on statecraft, called Statecraft 2.0, the essence of good statecraft is you're very clear about your objectives because you have to be able to marry means to those objectives. The administration has had, as you said correctly, a shifting set of objectives. When I try to boil it down, I think it comes to the following. There's a desire to see regime change or collapse, but there is an actual objective of regime weakening. Mm-hmm. And the regime weakening is designed to ensure that the Islamic Republic will not be able to threaten its neighbors for a long time to come. And if the regime is weakened to the point where the public will eventually be able to bring it down, or they'll be able to do that because there is such a defection, either a collapse or defection among the Revolutionary Guard and the Basij and the control mechanisms of the regime, that sooner or later the regime will disappear, even if that isn't the immediate objective. I think the essence of the objective right now is to weaken Iran's ability to threaten its neighbors with missiles, cruise missiles, and drones. That requires the destruction of the industrial base of the production of missile engines, missile components, the production line of the Shahed drones, all the materials that go into it, the whole supply chain of what goes into being able to produce it. Those, I think, are the main targets. We see attacks against all the headquarters and command posts of the Revolutionary Guard and the besieged, and maybe that's weakening them. We don't see signs of that yet, although, look, sometimes in a regime like this, everything looks like they're in control until they're not.
Iran is still obviously fighting back. The president apologized to Gulf states who've been hit by Iran and dragged into the conflict. What do you make of that move from Iran? Obviously we'd expect them to fight back, but to go after Gulf states, obviously U.S. targets generally in Gulf states, but what do you make of that move by them?
Well, he made the statement, and even as he was making the statement, they were launching attacks against all their neighbors. Yeah. And throughout the day, it didn't change at all. So it looks like either he is not in control at all or uninformed, or it was simply a kind of propaganda move, hoping it would create some sense on the part of the Gulf states if they sit this out on the one hand, and on the other, put pressure on President Trump to stop, maybe that could work. Their strategy from the beginning has been to try to pressure the key Gulf states to pressure President Trump to stop. Mm-hmm. What they've done instead is produce their own isolation, much greater anger on the part of the Gulf states, a kind of coalescence among them collectively. There was almost a feud between the Saudi Arabia and the UAE. That's now over. What you had from the president of the UAE yesterday was an explicit public call for Iran, a description of Iran as being an enemy, something they have never done. Yeah. So I think the posture of Pezeshkian yesterday, whatever its aim, clearly failed because the behavior of the regime didn't change one iota.
Because of what you've just said there, I wonder whether you think the ground has already shifted pretty dramatically in the Middle East. And regardless of how long this goes on, it could become sort of a turning point in some way.
It's interesting you asked that question because I was thinking about that before we came on. I do think we're going to see a new reality when this is over. And if the objective of the administration and the Israelis is achieved, meaning you really have changed the character of Iran's ability to threaten their neighbors, then it makes it more likely we will see more regional integration, not just of the defense, but even potentially politically. Now, to the extent to which the Israelis are incorporated into that, it will come back to whether or not they are approaching the Palestinian issue differently than this particular Israeli government has been doing.
What do you mean by that? They're going to have to show more openness to how that gets resolved overall?
I think they're going to have to show that they're changing the character of what they're doing. Right. You have the extreme right of this government with ministers like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich would like to see the Palestinian Authority collapse, would like to see a complete formal annexation of the West Bank. That approach has to change. The lawlessness of some of the extreme settlers has to end. The effort to at least create more of an image of coexistence with the Palestinians will have to be there. No one thinks that you can produce a Palestinian state tomorrow. There's a division between Palestinians. There's a need for reform on the Palestinian Authority side. That's not something that's going to in the immediate offering, but creating at least a vision that says there won't be a one-state reality. There will be a desire for coexistence with Palestinians. Changing the character and the approach, even if you can't resolve the issue, I think would provide many of the Gulf states at least an ability to say, okay, look, we're prepared to on a step-by-step basis, build a more of a relationship with Israel. It's not that you'll have normalization all at once, but you'll have a process where relations become more normalized. I think that becomes very much more possible in the aftermath of this conflict, because the nature of Iran and its proxies as a threat will largely have been dissipated.
Mm-hmm. Ambassador Dennis Ross, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your expertise as always.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
The U.S. Israeli war on the Iranian regime, now in its 9th day, is escalating. Israel has struck 4 oil storage depots and a refining facility in Tehran. That has sparked large fires right across Iran's capital, killing at least 4 people. The Iranian Red Crescent warns that rainfall following the explosions could be toxic now. The latest round of strikes come as Iran prepares to name a new supreme leader. Israel has threatened to target any new leader and the officials who confirm him. Earlier this morning, I spoke with the former chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, retired U.S. Admiral Mike Mullen, on the latest strikes and how this war could evolve from a military standpoint. Retired Admiral Mike Mullen, thanks so much for joining us this morning, sir.
Good to be with you, Rosemary.
Good. I'm going to start with this question that I've been asking for the past week, and that is whether air campaigns can lead to regime change, because everyone seems to agree that they cannot. What is your analysis of what the U.S. and Israeli military is targeting right now in terms of what it tells us about the overall goals?
Well, I think the military objectives have become very clear. One is to eliminate their missile capability, their drone capability, the industrial base that's associated with it, so it can't be rebuilt for, I would say, a decade or 2. That's one. Secondly, to reduce the nuclear program to near nothing, if that's possible. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it was devastated when we struck it last year, but we want to actually further eliminate that if possible so that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. We've eliminated their Navy, we've eliminated their air defenses and their Air Force. Their conventional military has never been, in my view, that much of a threat. Mm-hmm. The Navy certainly can have an impact on the Straits of Hormuz, and we see now that that's virtually stopped up completely, and that's going to have to open so that commerce can flow from there again. I think what General Kane said the other day, which was to prevent them from operating outside their borders, is a really good goal, not insignificant. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I watched is, I think yesterday or earlier today, we've hit some 4,000 targets. That's a lot of targets, and yet there's still more work to do. I think this is a war for survival for Iran, not just the regime, but for the country. Mm-hmm. And my own experience in the Middle East is survivors just pull out all the stops. So I don't think it'll end easily. Obviously, there's a big discussion about regime change. I'd like to point out that we had a lot to do with selecting the leaders in Iraq and Afghanistan. And that neither went well. We didn't make good choices there. So it's a particularly challenging issue. In addition to the regime itself, I would say wanting nothing to do with the U.S.'s view on how the regime should be run in the future.
There is some reporting now that from intelligence officials saying that Russia is providing Iran with U.S. military asset locations. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of other support for Iran, whether from Russia or China. But give me your assessment of what that makes, what difference that could make, the fact that Russia might be doing that and how dangerous that could be for the U.S.
Well, I'm not surprised at all. 1, 2, it's not good. It's been characterized as not a problem. It is a problem because Russia's got a really good intel agency, and capability. Russia is aligned with Iran and has been for years now, so it could be very impactful. China, of course, is also watching this very carefully. Now, China hasn't actively, from what I can see, supported Iran at this point. China's energy supply is greatly dependent on Iran. 1.3 million barrels a day of the 1.5 million that Iran pushes through the straits. 1.3 of it goes to China. Also, sort of bookending this at the end of the month is President Trump is due to go to China for a state visit, which is still on. And clearly China is watching the politics, the American appetite, the tactics, the economics of this. And there's nobody that's focused on China that wouldn't be thinking, including China, wouldn't be thinking about how does this play with respect to Taiwan. So it's expanded, physically in the region, from Cyprus to Oman to Azerbaijan. It's expanded geopolitically to Russia and to China in different ways. And that's war in the Middle East from my standpoint. It doesn't end quickly. It's extraordinarily complex. It goes in places we hadn't anticipated. And I think all that's in play.
Well, to that end, NATO increased its ballistic missile defense posture last week after there was a missile targeted in Turkey. Canada's Prime Minister talked about, there may be a need for sort of defensive action from countries like Canada in the Gulf states. How concerned are you that broadens in that way? And do you think it's likely that may have to happen?
Well, I mean, when I think about the Turkish aspect, just specifically, that adds an incredibly complex dimension. Turkey's a member of a NATO ally. A member of NATO, an ally of ours, and yet they're led by a president who actually wants to run the Islamic world and has for some time. Extraordinarily complex part of all this as well. I think that NATO now needs to look at its own defense capabilities with respect to this is very important as well. I mean, when I think about Europe, I think what we're doing now in terms of resourcing the Middle East is it continues to under-resource the needs that Ukraine has in Europe as well. And I think obviously Europe's got to have to step up to that as best they possibly can. So again, war in the Middle East has a way of widening and reaching in very imprecise, unanticipated ways, and we should be ready for that. And I don't expect it to be over quickly.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of what's scary, though, right? There's all these different ways dominoes could fall around this, and I wonder, what that means for the people of Iran, right? I mean, we see the president calling for them to get out there and try and help the regime change. But I wonder whether this is going to be a very difficult period for the people in Iran.
Well, it already has been. I mean, it has been for decades.
Yes, under the regime.
They are, politically vulnerable. They're economically vulnerable. They're internally vulnerable. All those things. That said, the idea that just killing Khamenei is going to change the regime, I don't think that's going to happen. The regime is deeply embedded. They've been planning on this. And so it's going to take an awful lot to make that happen. And then do you get the regime right for the future? Do they get it right for the future, much less us wanting to have a vote to some degree? At least that's what President Trump is saying, which I find hard to believe that they're going to let that happen. And again, it's that uncertainty that goes along with a breakout like this in the Middle East that is a survival war for Iran. And I think they're going to pull out all stops, including if they have the range, roping Europe in or roping NATO in, if that's possible. But they're clearly doing that with the countries in the region who would like this to go away as quickly as possible. Think of the billions and billions and billions of dollars the Gulf countries have invested in their tourist industry, in their economies, in their finance industry to attract investment in that part of the world. And all that's full stop right now.
Admiral Mike Mullen, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Rosemary.
The Canadian government is trying to help Canadians escape the conflict in the Middle East, but with flights only coming out of certain countries, some people have run into challenges leaving. Amanda Williams is in Qatar, and she is trying or thinking about trying to get back to Canada. She joins me this morning. Amanda, thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
So your situation is a little bit different because you live there. So I guess it's a little bit harder to decide what makes sense for you. What are you thinking about? What are you contemplating right now?
Well, now that I have my passport in hand, we are taking this day by day. Where, there are a lot of expats here that do live here, and they are traveling to Riyadh on a daily basis to catch scheduled flights, which are being canceled. So, Riyadh from here is at least a 5-hour drive if there's no border congestion, which there is. Or we would be, in essence, driving to the airport. If our flight's canceled, we either have to decide to drive back or stay at the airport. I don't really feel comfortable kind of being, for lack of a better word, stranded in an airport in the region at the moment. We are here in Qatar. Qatar has done a wonderful job in keeping us safe. I live in an area that I don't have any political or diplomatic targets here in the area. We are very far from the air-based airport. So we decided to shelter at home until the situation's a bit clearer.
What about one of these chartered flights that the government is providing sort of sporadically right now, but it is starting to ramp up? Any sense whether you would be able to get on one of those?
So the embassy has told us that they have reserved commercial seats, 200, and that we could go to Riyadh by bus. I have 2 children, 2 animals, myself, my husband. That part isn't feasible. We haven't been given any information on charters out of the area. That seems to be kind of hit and miss. I have seen that the U.S. has taken some people out by charter, but we would still be responsible for paying for those.
Sure. You said you're not in an area where you feel like things are going to be targeted. So what is going to sort of make the decision for you in terms of when you feel it's just not safe to be there? Because it could also go the other way, right? It could also calm down and then you don't have to worry at all.
So basically, Iran has said that they're going to stop bombing neighboring countries, but then they kind of went back on that yesterday.
Yeah,
it's been very quiet here today. I think for me, the defining factor would be if there were no actual political or military targets that they were seeking, that they were just going after civilian areas to do as much damage as possible.
Sure.
Also, if any of the nuclear capabilities in Iran are targeted, that's quite close to us.
Yeah.
That would be something that we would say, okay, it's time to go because we cannot determine how far we are in terms of fallout.
It must be difficult, even if it's relatively, quiet where you are. It must be difficult to live there right now, just because of the unknowns, I would imagine.
It is. It's stressful.
Yeah.
For sure. We're not just making decisions for ourselves. We have a helper here with us. We're, in essence, making decisions for her as well.
Yeah.
It's a bit heavy.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Listen, thank you for taking the time to speak with us about it, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. It's very kind.